Good morning. Thank you for your patience with our rescheduling this from Tuesday and our challenges Tuesday with not being able to get Jackie online to show the hair one Tuesday afternoon. We were able to show a recording of that. So this morning we're just going to do the prom traditions that was rescheduled from last Tuesday morning. We're going to do a little flip-flop on you. We're going to do the marketing portion first. Suzie has been traveling and needs some more time to prepare this morning. So we're going to do the marketing while she finishes her preparation, and then we'll be ready to go after that. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the marketing portion. We're going to do, this is normally broken up into two sessions. We're going to cover some basic marketing type things, and then we do the second session after another webinar. Then also just kind of a heads up about next week. Next week on Tuesday morning, we're actually going to be doing our sympathy, and you'll see a number of keepsake sympathy ideas, and a number of those are Fitz design items, but we'll talk about keepsake sympathy in detail. And then also, I don't know if you get this, if you get the electronic version of floral management. If not, if you get the print version, you'll be getting this shortly. But I got the electronic version this morning and read through most of it, but there is a lot of really great sympathy information in there. I'm not done with all of it. There's still a few more pages to read. But in preparation for next week's sympathy webinar in the morning, I would really suggest if you've got the electronic version, open it up and read the sympathy things. There's a lot of people from a lot of different perspectives. And then if you get the hard copy, then be sure to read through that. There's a lot of information, and we will share some of that information also. And then the afternoon session is what we call Selling the Wow. A lot about upselling and what can you do to upsell the fancier, nicer pieces. So after you've started with your basic prom corsage, how do you add on sales? So that's next Tuesday afternoon's program from there. The next three Tuesdays, we'll have to figure out how we're actually going to make that work. I will be in China, and so I'm not sure that I'll be available. But if not, then I may record it ahead of time, or the designer can also. They're all know our marketing information, so they may also do it. But anyway, I'm assuming, since I haven't had any comments back from Jamie, that everybody can see me and hear me. So let's go ahead and begin about this morning's marketing session. So first, I always like to start with this. Let me review what I'm here to do. As a presenter, whether it's me or the designer, when you attend something like this, you're really coming to learn something new, to be challenged. You're not wanting to just keep doing the same old thing, or you wouldn't join us. So my job is to challenge you, which means I'm going to say some things that are going to do one of two things. They're either going to inspire you because you think they're great ideas, or you're going to get a knot in your stomach and go, he just has no clue. Hopefully we're going to work on a lot more inspiration, but I will tell you all of these ideas have been tested repeatedly. But at the same time, one of the things I want to say to you is we're going to give you tons and tons of ideas. Don't try and do them all. It's very difficult. And the old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. Find a couple that you think that you understand, that you like, that you're comfortable with. Run with those and do them, and then do them very well. So down at the bottom here, you notice there's a translation. So for those of you who get the knot in your stomach about the things that I'm going to say, just means I've apologized to you in advance if I offend you. I am here to challenge you and to cause you to think differently, and you'll see that as we go through here. So we have Fitz rule number one, and this is important. Make sure you've done your homework when it comes to, and this doesn't just apply to prom, but we're talking about it specifically about prom today. But whatever event or holiday that you're working on, make sure you do your homework. Make sure you have a plan and a goal. Make sure you're well prepared. And then when you go to all of that effort, have fun at it. I like to make the comparisons to vacations often. Spend a lot of time planning and preparing for a vacation. Sometimes the work of having the vacation is more than than actually you've done the preparation, and you're more worried about being everywhere at the right time, at the right place, and you don't necessarily have fun with it. My daughter is getting married in 10 days, and she has a very detailed timeline for her wedding. And I shared with her just a couple of days ago, hey, make sure you have fun with this. You know what? Don't worry about standing on the X at exactly the right time. Let me shepherd people into the right place, and you just enjoy your day. There's a lot of things you want to try and do, and we understand that with the schedule, but you have fun with it. And, you know, if we're a few minutes late, don't worry about it. If we're a few minutes early, don't worry about it, but just have fun. However, I'm conducting the ceremony, and I did tell her, when it comes time to start the ceremony, you better make sure you're there on time. That one we're going to live by that time frame. So whatever you're doing, whether it's a holiday, a special event, make sure that you're prepared and make sure that you really have fun doing this. When it comes to prom, you get to make a lot of girls' dreams come true. And if you're well prepared for that, then enjoy the fact that you're making their dream come true. Okay, here's my definition of marketing, and I like to talk about this to make sure that folks understand the difference of the types of things I'm saying. My definition of marketing is things that you can do about your business that can be measured. And I differentiate things that you do about your business that cannot be measured as advertising versus marketing. So the example I give often is if you put a billboard out on the side of the road that has the name of your flower shop and some pretty pictures, that's advertising. But if you put a statement on there that says, mention this billboard for a discount, or mention this billboard and get your picture taken with me, or some action statement that goes with it, then you're able to measure the results of that particular billboard. If it said, mention this billboard and receive a free rose, it'd be real easy to count how many people came in and got a free rose. Take that number, divide it into your cost of the billboard, then you understand what your cost was per customer. But at the same time, where we go back to that previous slide where we're talking about making a plan and being prepared, if you were going to do something like that, putting out a billboard or an ad that says, mention this for a free rose, your preparation would be making sure you have enough free roses to be able to do that with. The other part of your plan is, okay, when they come in, other than just giving them a free rose, what are we going to do with them? What are we going to say to them? What are we going to show them so that that you know why you did it and what are you going to get? So if they're going to come in and get their free rose, you're also going to give them a mini tour of your store. You're going to offer them an additional discount of something that might be in the cooler. But make a plan that if you were going to do that, you can, again, look at what your return on that investment is. So the difference between, in my definition, between marketing and advertising is doing things that can be measured. So again, if you were going to have an employee contest, who could sell casket sprays over $300, and there would be a prize for that. Again, it's easy to track that. Instead of just saying to the sales team, we want you to sell casket sprays over $300. Well, by having a specific measurement, you can tell whether or not that's actually happening. So in one, you might say, we need to improve our casket spray sales. The other one says, we want to sell over $300. You can track those over $300. If you're going to provide an incentive, you can track that against it. So the difference between marketing and advertising in my definition of those things. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to flood you with ideas. Don't try and do them all. I know you can't. You can't do them all because I can't do them all, and this is what I do for a living. So find two, either in the entire presentation or find two in each category, and take those two and do them very well. And then a few months later, maybe pick up a couple of more. If you're doing this about prom, find a couple that you like still for this year, but pick out the ones that you might like, that you might want to be able to add for next year. Interesting fact, this was published in Floral Management last year, SAS magazine. Prom is the fourth largest floral holiday. And when I read that, I kind of went, wow, that's a great way to phrase it. And it is the fourth largest floral holiday. And if we plan for it and we prepare for it in the same way we prepare for the other holidays, we'll see much better results, much stronger results. If you plan for prom, I make the similarity to Valentine's Day often. It's a whole lot of people coming for your shop for an event that happens on one day, and then afterwards it's over. You might be able to sell some apology roses after Valentine's Day, but I don't think you've ever sold a prom corsage the day after. So think about it as a holiday, plan for it as a holiday, prepare for it as a holiday, and I think you'll see stronger results. The prom market in the United States is $6.6 billion. By comparison, the National Football League is $9.2 billion. We think about all the time, effort, and energy that's involved in football, whether it's having a T-shirt day or people can wear the jersey, or watching the games, or Monday morning quarterbacking, the pools, all those different types of things. The amount of effort that's put into the National Football League, and prom in the U.S. is 2/3 the size of that. So what I want to be able, the reason for saying that is it deserves a lot of your time. So if we go back and look at this statement about it being the fourth largest floral holiday, and then looking about how large it is, putting time, planning, investment into it should come back to us. Here's an average look of where all that money goes that makes up those billions of dollars. The average prom dress is now over $400. Tanning, makeup, prom tickets, dinners, flowers, photography, all of these things are added into that number. I did some calculations last year, and the quick estimate I came up to is that the corsage portion of that is $325 million. So there's an awful lot of flower business out there. When I took and did some math of a number of sets of numbers, we came up with that number. However, when you look at this list of where the money's being spent, the interesting thing is that after the prom, there are only three things left: the dress, the flowers, and the photography. And two of those three things are the least expensive items on this list: the flowers and the photography. However, flowers continue to get better. Every year we see an increase in the amount being spent on prom flowers, and so we want to continue to raise that number. There is a number of things going around social media. ABC News posted an interesting statistic a couple of days ago. For families who make under $25,000 a year, the average prom, and this is a report by Visa, the average prom is $1,400. However, for families over $50,000 a year, the average prom is $800. We would have thought it would have been reversed, but I do hear often people tell me that, especially in rural areas, that many times they go all out, especially on their flower side of it, because it's their one big event of the year. But here's just a quick look of where those dollars add up to be. Now, this is important, and I want to share this with you. This is kind of things lining up the way we want them to be. Teen Prom and 17 Prom are both owned by 17 Magazine. They do a number of surveys and quite a bit of conversation with teenage girls. They do a trend analysis, and I attend their trend report every year. They go around the country presenting their trend report. And one of the things that they're presenting in this year's trend report is that girls are looking for, and it is the trend, that they are looking for fancy corsages. They are looking for big, fancy, and expensive. So one of the things we have to be careful, as in all other trends, is to make sure that we go with this trend. Don't take this year as a year to be super conservative, because your customers are coming in looking for fancy, looking to go with their dress, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But here is the opportunity that the trend is lining up with exactly what we want. Again, going back to this month's floral management, Tim Huckabee has an article in there about prom sales, and he shares an interesting story with a florist in Columbus, Ohio, where he was in their store visiting, asked them what their average corsage was, and they said $25. And he said to them, not anymore. Now it's $45. And Tim went through his process about how you change that dynamic in your store from 25 to 45. And in the article, it mentions that a couple of days later, Tim got a text saying, we sold another $45 corsage. So look for these more expensive price points. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid to embrace them. But it is one of those things, if you don't try, you're definitely not going to get it. So this is great that the trend is lining up with exactly where we want it to be in the flower business. Okay, I like to talk about this a lot. The question is, do you have a plan? But really the question to me is, do you have a goal? And we talk about this at Fitz often, and you'll hear it probably in almost every presentation I give. So when it comes to your prom business, do you have a plan of how you're going to execute? And then do you have a goal? What is it that you want to accomplish this prom season? Do you want to have an increase? And if so, how much? Do you want to maintain the same as last year? Your business's dynamic is changing and you're projecting a sales loss. What is that number? And then do you know how to manage for that particular number? So one of the things to look at, and we'll talk about it from two approaches, is if you have a goal, and I'm just going to make one up. Let's say your goal is to have a 20% increase. You'll need to do the math. What was last year's prom sales? Figure out what that 20% number is, and then realize that you have to have enough components of your plan to reach that number. So again, let's dream for a minute. You decide your goal is to double your prom business from last year. And if that's your goal, that's great. But you can't do that by doing the same things you did last year. So you're going to have to do more things, or you're going to have to ramp up the ones you do to reach a bigger goal. Smaller goal, less plans. Bigger goal, more plans. Now, for those who create the plan and then ramp it up to the goal, so let's say you know the things that you're going to do this year. You're going to do a bling buffet. You're going to do a display board. You're going to offer more ribbons. You're going to offer more expensive flowers. So you look at each of the components of these things that you're going to do this year and then assign a dollar number to them. So if you believe that by putting out the bling buffet out in front for people to see it, that's going to generate $500 in sales. And again, I'm just making these numbers up. Then what you need to do is assign a sales value to each one of those plans, and then add all of that up, and then that becomes your goal. Now, one of the interesting things, by doing these numbers, it's important to compare them against last year. One of the things that happens often is people put their plans together, and their goal and their plan doesn't line up. So they might say, our goal is to have a 20% increase. They put the planks of the plan together, assign a value to each one of them, and add it together, and find out that it doesn't reach your 20% goal. If that case, you need to go back and reevaluate them. So if you're going to put a bling buffet out, but you haven't hit your goal, how do you ramp up that bling buffet? How do you do more with it to make that number meet to the component you need it to be in the goal? Or do you need to add other plans? If you're going to go out and do a prom fashion show, what do you think your results will be for that? Add all of those things together, assign a dollar value to them. If this is your first year doing this, you're just going to have to guess. But your experience gives you a good idea. Now, at the end of the season, you'll do an after-prom review, and you'll know whether or not those numbers are right. But really have a goal and a plan to help you focus on what you're doing. And this goes back to what I said earlier. Don't try and do all these ideas. Take a few of them. How much are they going to contribute into your goal? What will they? What value do they have? And then add of all those things together. Any questions here? Okay, if you've got questions, type them into Jamie, and she'll be sure to let me know. Okay, I think we talked about this a little bit, but one of the things about putting together your goal and your plan, and I like to reference goals and plans again to vacation. Everybody knows how to do this goal and planning thing because you do it when you go on vacation. When you go on vacation, you make a determination about what you want to do. Some people just want to rest. For me, I want my vacations to be very filled. As a family, we do a lot of nature things. We've been to Africa. We've been to Yellowstone, the Florida Keys. We want to include nature components in that. Some people have staycations, and you've got your long list of the things you've got to do at home to get fixed. So you know how to plan your goal. What are you going to do on vacation? And then what are your plans to make all of that happen? So if you're going to Disney, what days are you going? What parks are you going to? What rides do you want to ride? What characters do you want to see? You put all that together, but you put your goal together and then you put your plan. If you're flying somewhere, one of your plans is I've got to be to the airport at this time and I've got to get on this airplane. If you're driving, we're going to get on this highway. We're going to change to this highway. We're probably going to stop about here for lunch. We're going to take a detour off here to see Aunt Suzie. But again, you've put those plans together. Now, one of the important things about your plans and your goals are to make sure you share them with your staff. And the example I give with that, again, goes back to your vacation. Can you imagine if you went on vacation, you got the kids up and said, okay, we're going on vacation, get in the car. The kids get in the car and they go, Mom and Dad, where are we going? And you look at them and go, it's none of your business. Well, you know the aggravation you would get with that. You need to share your goals and your plans with your team, with your staff. They will help you reach it. Also, make sure that they're measurable and that you can keep track of what your goals are. So, again, being measurable, you don't want to say, I just want an increase in sales. If you get a penny, you've got an increase in sales. You need to be doing steps that are all measurable and tangible so you can check whether or not you're reaching them. So make sure to share your goals and plans too. So here's some quick questions. Again, I talked about the top of this a moment ago about how Valentine's Day and prom are the same. But here's some questions that might help you. How much do you want to increase the average price of your corsage? How much do you want to increase the average price of your boutonniere? Do you know how many corsages you want to sell? So again, going back to putting the plans together, you're going to sell 100 corsages at $35 a piece. Well, you know that you've got $3,500 in sales there. And that's an example of applying a value to each one of your, how many boutonnieres are you going to sell? How many extras are you going to sell? Fancy packaging. So what are the steps that you're going to take? But these could be some questions that can help you as you look at putting together both your goal and your plan, which is your roadmap to help you get to where you want to be. This I talked about. Goals need to be specific, detailed, written about, and written down. Goals that are written down seem to have a life of their own. You see that something that you've taken the time to write becomes more tangible than something that is just spoken. So again, an example, you want to sell it to schools. That's not very tangible. I want to sell it 3 schools. I want to do 2 fundraisers. Making them tangible are able to help you determine whether or not you actually made your goal and you hit the numbers where you want them to be. So again, if part of your plan is you want to do 2 fundraisers, how many dollars do you think that's going to give to you? Add that in to help you make your plan number. We have a planning worksheet on our website under our support marketing tab. It gives you dates of things that you might want to have done. Print one of these out for each school, put it up on the board, check marks next to them when you have them done. It's the kind of thing everybody can keep an eye on. What do we need to have done this week? Go back, refer to your plan often, and don't be afraid to change it. If your goal is too low, raise it. If your goal is too high, lower it. If you're not going to be able to do 3 fundraisers, change it down to 2 fundraisers. Adjust your numbers accordingly. Okay, so here's a quick goal list. What I want you to do is to write down your goal list. What is the goal, and what are the plans that you want to be able to do? Putting all of this together, and I'd love for you to email them to me and tell me about them. We would love to hear what you set, whether or not you've reached them. Every once in a while, I may check in with you to see how they're going. And if there's anything we can do to help you with that, we'd love to help you achieve your goals. Here's one thing that's important to me, and this goes back to the apology. I really want you to begin to think differently. There are a lot of people that hate doing prom corsages, and I'm sorry that the schools schedule them on Mother's Day. There are many more florists who are getting proactive and talking to the schools and explaining to them why that's a difficult time and how much more expensive their flowers are going to be. And schools are beginning to embrace the idea of looking at other dates. But I want you to think about things differently. So one of the first things I want you to think about doing differently is not necessarily referring to it as just a corsage. A corsage and the boutonniere, but especially the corsage, is a fashion accessory that goes with the dress. And that's really what the girl is looking at. They spend 6 months picking out their dress. So after they've picked out their dress, they're looking for everything else to go with that. Exactly the right jewelry, exactly the right shoes, exactly the right hairstyle, the right purse. They're looking for all of those things to be the perfect component that adds all that together and makes it magic. They want that from their flowers too. So when you're looking at the dress and you're creating the corsage, think about it as being a fashion accessory that goes with the dress and not just a corsage that happens to be flowers that you have in your store. There's not very many girls who are looking for 5 spray roses and a bow to go with that beautiful $400 plus dress that they've just bought. So here's some pictures, give you an idea of they're looking for exactly the perfect thing. I love that hairstyle. Great, great idea. But if a gal has bought just an amazing dress and she's got that hairstyle, those shoes, she's really telling you that she's interested and not afraid to spend money, but she wants to make sure that she has the perfect look, and that also includes her florals. So I want you to change a little bit about the way you think about flowers for prom. Now remember, I spoke about the apology up front, but here's one of the things I want you to do. I want you to understand that each girl wants to be different. So each girl, and this is something you can share with them, each girl going into the prom, the couple is going to have a corsage and a boutonniere. But she's looking to walk in and the entire audience turn around and look at her and focus on her. So one of the things you can easily say to her is that that's what everybody else is going to have is a corsage and a boutonniere. How about we do this? We do a corsage for you. We do a boutonniere for him. The corsage is going to be amazing. It's going to match the things in your dress perfectly. Then let's look at a third thing for you. Let's look at a signature piece for you that's really going to make you stand out. It can be something for your hair. It can be a necklace. It can be any number of things that's going to be unique and different, but it's going to be special for you. So one of the things we talked about before, thinking about prom as a holiday and not just as another day, leadership on your part, talk to them about this third thing and having this third thing included. Take the lead in showing them the types of things that you can do. But just as a general rule, you know that if you're going to go into each visit, each consultation with the expectation of selling 3 things instead of 2, you know that your sales are going to have to go up. Now, just because you don't get it on all of them, that's okay. Get it on the ones you can. Take that and look at next year how you can get more of them. But it can be a part of your plan that adds into your goal to help you increase your sales. And that's what we're trying to help you do, is increase your sales. Okay, so this is one of the things we'd like, again, thinking differently. One of the things we'd like you to look at doing is to have this magazine in your store. There are other prom magazines, so we want you to have a prom magazine. If you have a choice, I'd like you to have this one. I'd like you to support Teen Prom, and specifically I want you to support Teen Prom because they are the only prom magazine that has flowers in their magazine. They're actually showing dresses, corsages with flowers. They support us. I would like you to support them. So you want to have this magazine in your store. And this is a great selling tool. So what you want to be able to do with this is two different things. When the girl comes in, the first thing you want to be able to do is to give it to her and say, show me the color of your dress. And we all know how important that is. If the boy comes in and tells you that dress is red and you make a red corsage, you look bad. So make sure that they show you the color of your dress. By the way, this is one of the hot colors this year. This is hot coral. The other hot color for this year is a watermelon, which is not what you and I know as watermelon, but it's more like a slightly toned down hot pink, but very vibrant. So the other thing I want you to do, again, about thinking differently, is the second thing I want you to do is to ask the girl to show you her dress. So let's say this dress on the cover or this dress on the back is the dress that she shows you that is the dress she's wearing to prom. What I want you to realize is that when the girl shows you the dress, she has really told you what her budget is. She has told you what her access to money is. If the girl came in to order her prom flowers and she pulled up in the parking lot in a Rolls-Royce limo, you would know that she has money to spend. If she pulled up in the Beverly Hillbillies truck, you might not think she has a lot of money to spend. She would tell you that she's more on a budget. But when the girl shows you her dress, she has now really told you what her access to money is. So here's a different way to think about corsages, to think about that fashion accessory, is to work off of this formula. Corsages start at 15% of the price of the dress. If she's shown you that dress, she's told you that she has access to money. Make a great corsage for her that is in that price point, that goes with that style, that goes with that budget that she has. So our general rule, corsages start at 15% of the price of the dress. We also see that this rule works very well year after year. I've never had anybody call me back and say, I tried it and it didn't work. I have had people say, I didn't believe him, and so I only did 10% of the price of the dress, but it worked. But even if that's the case, if your average corsage is $35 and the average dress is $400 and you want to use 10% and that helps you raise your sale, use it. But I'd like you to use 15% of the price of the dress. Again, if they've got that dress, they've got access to money, and you know that. Okay, so that's another way to be thinking differently. Everybody likes this. Here's a good reason why to have them show you the color of the dress. On the right, how men think about color: red, purple, pink, orange, yellow, green, and blue. There aren't any other colors. That's just it, right? Then how women think about color, all of the different shades and tones that go with it. So having them show you the color of the dress, especially if it's the boy or the mother, really helps sort things out. Again, like the example I showed, if he says it's red and it's really that coral, it helps you make a corsage that's right in line. So, here's some quick tips that will help you with some of your prom sales. When you're working with the girls, give them the freedom to be as creative as they want to be. If they want to get a little wacky with their corsage, shouldn't make any difference to you. Make it, charge them for it, have lots of fun with it. Consider making signature corsages, very expensive corsages that when the doctor's daughter and the lawyer's daughter and the business owner's daughter walks in, that you've got something that's in their price point. So again, if this girl walks in, that you've already got something made up that's in that price point, you'll be able to take her by the hand, take her over here and say, let me show you something here that's just for you. It's very special. And you know it's going to be more expensive. There's going to be more involved. So make sure that you take the time to put these very expensive corsages together, and often you'll see your sales go up because you do that. Have a lot of ribbons. There's no question that ladies and girls love ribbon. And if you don't believe me, just look in your back room. You've got tons of it there. Unique foliages. This was one of Suzie's ideas, and this is a great idea. Just by picking out some of the unique foliages that are available, you give a whole different look to those corsages. If you're using some tropical foliages, or you're using variegated pit or Italian ruscus, or even adding in some springerei or asparagus, look at using some unique foliages into your corsages. Peer pressure can work in your favor. Often we feel guilty about this, but don't be afraid to just be able to say, you know what, the other people are doing this and you're below this. That's fine if that's where you want to be, but this is your big day. Are you sure you don't want to upscale? Don't be afraid to use that. Talked about this earlier. Raise your prices just because all of your costs are going up, and don't be afraid to raise your prices. Of course, you're going to do it with discretion, but look at doing it. There are those that use the three price point method, the good, better, best method. And if you use that, okay. But one of the things we all know is that almost everybody picks the middle. So if they're going to pick the middle, then make that a price point that works for you. Make sure it fits with where you want your average to be. And nobody says you have to go in simple increments. Nobody says you have to go from 25 to 35 to 45 for your good, better, best. There's nothing to say you can't go from 25 to 45 to 65. But if you know they're going to pick the middle one, manipulate that one so that it helps you meet your goals where you want to be. Have the youngest girl in your store be your designated prom salesperson. You get a lot more energy, two young girls working together. And I tell folks, if I'm the youngest person in your store, go get somebody else. Make sure you've got a well-trained staff. Make sure that everything is priced and it's easy for them to understand. Spend time with them, showing them how it's going to be made or how it's going to go together. You're not giving away any trade secrets. You're just making them more comfortable in the process. And that's the next thing. Get them involved in the process as much as you can. Show them that you're interested, and don't be afraid to show your higher price point things first. One of the suggestions we give is to sell the bracelet first and the flowers next. This we've kind of covered. Show the higher price points. Have at least $100 one made up. Have a lot of samples made up for them to try on. Have your corsage boards made up. Don't leave your boutonnieres to chance. Make them a part of the process. And as it says here at the bottom, don't forget to have fun with this. Okay, that is it for the marketing portion of this today. Suzie is ready to join us, but before she does, what questions do you have for me? Okay, Suzie, are you there? We'll give her just a minute to unmute her microphone.
I am here.
Okay. Everybody, thanks for joining. And Suzie will take it from here. We're here to answer your questions. And again, we really appreciate your patience in doing through our technology issues, not working on Tuesday. And like I mentioned, next week, the morning one is about keepsake sympathies. And we want to see as many people come and join our webinars as possible. A lot of time, effort, and energy is put together in these. It's like when you plan for a big party or big event, you want as many people to come as possible. So thank you very much, Suzie. And I'll be here if you guys have any questions. Have a great day.
Hello, everybody. I guess it's my turn, and I hope you're all ready for the hands-on section. I'm sure you have a lot of information going on in your heads right now. Dan usually has some great tips and ideas to share with you to get your prom season on its way. So now we're going to take all that, what we learned in the marketing session, and we're going to apply it somehow to the design session. You know, it all goes hand in hand, and you've got to be able to, just like we do with you, we show you the wow, and we teach you how to make the wow, and then we teach you how to sell the wow. You kind of do that same thing with your customers too. You really got to just show them all the pretty things you can make, and then as you work with them, when you're selling the piece, you're kind of, you know, telling them how you're going to create it. So you're teaching them how to create the wow, and then ultimately they have to buy the wow. So it's really the same thing, kind of going in the other direction that you're going to do to your customer. So we're going to show you some wow right now. We're going to do 3 projects for today's Prom Traditions hands-on projects. And, you know, we said you have to sell 3 items, your corsage, your boutonniere, and that's something extra. So that's exactly what we're going to do here today. And I have some inspiration pieces to show you first. All of these are made primarily with the same base Fitz design products, but yet they all have a very different end look. That's the versatility of the Fitz design products in your creativity. Just because we're showing you one type of product, it doesn't mean it can't be used in a lot of different ways. So all these corsages that I'm showing you right now all have the same base core products of Fitz design. They have a bracelet, they have some feathers, and they have the accent sprays. And look at all the different unique ideas that you can come up with using those exact same products. You can do something with Gerber daisies, something with dendrobium orchids. Here's something with some spray roses and alstroemeria. And then something with some very sweet daisies. So what we're going to show you today is I'm actually going to do the Gerber daisy corsage, because whenever we work with Gerber daisies, no matter where we are, we always have people question, do they really work? Can we really use those in a corsage? And absolutely you can. The most important thing to remember when you're using a flower like a Gerber daisy, first is that it came in very fresh and of high quality. And that secondly, you have taken the proper steps in the care and handling chain to make sure you've gotten the flower, its preservative, that you've hardened it off in the cooler, and that it's really nice and cooled down and turgid, so that when you put it into your corsage, it's in its freshest, most beautiful condition. And then also after you make the corsage, that you're using some type of anti-transpirant. Really, there's so many great ones on the market. We recommend that you choose the one that you like to use best, but be sure to follow the instructions, and then put your corsage either into a corsage bag or a nice corsage box, put it into the cooler, and that Gerber daisy will last beautifully all through the prom night for your prom girls and guys. So let's go ahead and get started with the corsage. We're going to use the Color Your World bracelet. I have one here in lavender. I'm going to use 1 stem of the flutters and just a few stems of my accent spray. So I'm going to go ahead and get all that stuff prepared. Just about 3 of them here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my camera down so you can see my hands as I construct this. So hold on 1 second. There we go. So if there's anybody new to our webinars or new to the Fitz Design Education, you've never seen one of our workshops, I'm going to go over this really quickly for you because it's really important. Using Fitz Design products, we want to make sure that you have success doing that. In order for you to have success, you have to know the proper ways to use our products. And the one thing that you'll notice is that we have both the disc clip and then the design disc on our bracelets. This adds a lot of versatility to how the designer can choose to construct their corsage and how they want to attach it right to the bracelet. A more traditional way for those who are wiring and taping, you're familiar with this mechanic where you just simply put the spine of the corsage over and then use the little wings here to secure that around the corsage. Another way to do that for a little extra security is to use the ribbon rosette that's here in the center. And we always recommend, no matter what type of corsage construction you are using, that you unravel those little streamers. Get that tape off there, unravel those streamers, because we want to make sure our mechanics are secured tightly to the corsage. Many times they are, and you don't have to really retie them, but sometimes they're a little loose, and I like my mechanics to be very tight and secure, so I'll always double check that mechanic by making sure I add another little knot so that it's very nice and secure to the bracelet. Now, another way you can use these streamers to tie around your corsage, you would just simply set your corsage in the center and then use the ties to come up around and then tie it tightly in the center. Another added secure way to make sure that your wired and taped corsage is secured to the bracelet. But for today's method, we are going to use the floral adhesive. And so we really don't need the extra rings. So we're going to go ahead and fold those over, get them out of our way. And what we have done here is we've just actually made our gluing base, our platform where we're going to create the corsage just a little bit bigger by adding those extra little side shoots there when we've turned in those wings. From here, where is the normal little design disc, we've just increased the size. It's not always necessary, but it's always good to have a little extra space, especially when we're creating a corsage using a larger flower, such as the Gerber daisy. Another benefit to the disc clip, on some of our corsages that are a little higher profile, I'm going to reach over here. A lot of times when you have the beads for the bracelet, the corsage has a little higher profile. The disc, and let me see if I can slip this on here to show you. The disc sits up a little bit higher off the wrist just because of the dimension of the bead that we have in the corsage, in the bracelet. So we have heard from time to time that some people are concerned that the weight of the flower, the actual corsage part, gets a little tippy, especially on the high-profile bracelets. On something like the Color Your World and many of our other ones, they're flat, so you don't have that problem. But if you're using one of our bracelets that has the larger beads, here's a quick tip for you. You can see how flat that is by simply bending that disc clip on a slight curve. When you wear that on the wrist, it now stops that whole entire corsage from doing that flippity flop. So it's just another little added mechanic in there that helps the wearer wear your designs comfortably. Also, why I have this right here, I'm going to show you the proper way to wear a corsage. We all know the proper way to carry a bridal bouquet, but how many of us actually knew that there's a proper way to wear a corsage? Well, there is. And really, what you want to do is, we have a tendency to put our bracelets and everything right on the joint there from your wrist to your arm. And when we do that and we wear flowers here, we create that resistance, and we run the risk of, when we move our hands and when we're doing things, that these flowers, especially on this side and this edge of the corsage, are going to get a little more damaged. It's just natural. It's not a bad thing. It's not that your flowers are bad or that you've constructed it wrong. It's just natural. It'd be the same thing as bumping up your corsage, from the front. So what really you want to do is tell your prom girls to slip them back maybe about an inch past that joint. So now when they're flexing their hands, they're not interfering with the actual corsage. It's more comfortable to wear back here as well. And then the next part is have them slide that slightly forward. So that way when they're in the pictures, the entire front of your corsage is being photographed. When the corsages were up here and they hold their hands, they're seeing, yes, you see the bracelet, which of course we here at Fitz Design love, but really we want to make sure that everything complements each other and that they're seeing a little bit of the bracelet and definitely the beautiful flowers that you've designed for them. So remember that when your prom girls come in and you're taking that leadership role and educating them in the proper way to wear their corsage. A little bit back from the wrist and a slightly forward. Most comfortable way to wear it. Okay, our next step then, now that we have that nice and tied on there securely, we're going to make our ribbon, our bow. And I have some of the beautiful little flash ribbon here with a little glitter to it in a lavender. I'm just going to go ahead and create my ribbon. I'm not overly, I'm not overly concerned with how many loops. Really what I want to do is I want to know, am I going to use a yard? Am I going to use 2 yards, 3 yards? Whatever your breakdown or your recipe requires, I would cut off that length and then I would create my bow, however many loops it took. And then I usually have all my streamers coming down the one side. Again, when you're wearing the corsage, you want the streamers or anything that's going to dangle or hang or cascade from the corsage to be worn so that it comes over the front of the wrist, not towards the back where it could get tangled in any beadwork or sequins that she may have on her dress. So I'm going to just have a couple little of the streamers, and then I'm going to take another little piece of ribbon to tie off my bow. This is just my preferred mechanic. A lot of you I know will use wire. The reason I don't do that is because it's one more mechanic I have to have on hand. It's one more mechanic that I have to try to conceal and cover up. And then this way, if I've used 2 yards, it's part of my 2 yards, so I'm not adding any more additional product. And then it's concealed. You don't really see that something is holding that together. And I have a couple extra little streamers. So to me, it's one less piece and it's just a little quicker way to do it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ribbon streamers that we had from the rosette, and I'm going to tie my bow to the base. Believe it or not, for some reason, this is always the hardest part for me because I seem to be all thumbs when I have to get down inside of there. But it's really important that you make sure it's tied tight, because if you do cut off these streamers, if it's not tied tight enough, then of course the streamers will unravel and then your bow will come loose. So we don't want that to happen. And in this case, I don't need the streamers, although I could certainly leave them on, maybe add a little decorative end to them with a little petal or a leaf or a rhinestone and keep those in there as part, especially since they work with the color. And we're really careful about when we create our corsages or our bracelets and we're adding those little ribbon rosettes, you'll know a lot of them coordinate with the color of the bracelet. That's intentional, so that way you can use what is normally a mechanic as something decorative. Again, it's that versatility in our products. Okay, I'm just going to snip those out. Okay. I'm actually just going to adjust it so that my streamers are coming down where I want them to. And then the next step is I'm going to take some of the floral adhesive I just want to kind of pick up all my ribbon loops of my bow because I don't necessarily want them in the way while I'm doing this. And I'm going to apply a solid coat of glue across that whole disc and the ends of the clip there. And this is going to help me conceal my mechanics. It's going to help get that bow set in place. For those of you new to using the floral adhesive, keep in mind, actually the trick to this, and the most important trick, is that you have glue-to-glue contact. That's what creates that bond to help everything hold securely into your items that you're creating. So you can see I've covered, not with a heavy layer. I would know I had too much if it started to ooze over and drip off the sides, but I've gotten the glue all the way to the ends, and there's just a nice layer on there that covers the whole thing. Then I could go ahead and let my ribbon just kind of fall back into place. In my case, I have a wired ribbon, so I kind of have to coach it back into place, which is okay. And it's all right if some of that ribbon gets into that glue. Don't worry about that. By the time we get our flowers and all our accessories added in there, you're really not going to see that glue that touch that ribbon. And then again, it's just going to help hold that ribbon in place. Now we're ready to cover our mechanics. And I heard Dan say earlier, talking about how I like to use different foliages because they give you different looks. For this project, we are going to be using some silk corsage leaves of your choice, but even those, depending on the texture or the color or the finish of them, if they're a velvet leaf, this has to be this one is like almost like a mylar with an iridescent glitter pattern to it. Some of them have glitter on them. Some of them are natural to look like natural leaves. And then, of course, also, if you want to get real creative and have some more fun, there's always the Fitz design foliage line that is fun to add in. But that really, don't think of foliage as just a way to cover your mechanics. It's a great way to add another texture, another color, another element of fun to your corsages. So you can see differently how this rose leaf compared to a ruscus leaf gives a different dimension and a different shape. If you had variegated leaves, that would also give a different look to it. So I'm going to go ahead and use my silk corsage leaves, and I don't need them on their stems, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the stems. Actually, these, I'm going to take them right off their backing. I'm going to use about 4 of those to cover my mechanics. Now, the next step is, remember I said earlier, glue-to-glue contact? So I have my glue on my base already. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue to all my leaves. And by a little bit, you can see I've gone maybe, a ½ inch up onto that back of that leaf. And again, a good solid amount, but nothing that's running off. That's what's really important. I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to prepare all my leaves all at once. By working in this order, I allow that glue to get a little tackier. And when it's a little tackier, not fresh out of the tube, it holds faster in place. And that way we don't have that movement of the flower or the foliage that sometimes gets frustrating when we put something into the corsage and it doesn't stay exactly where we want it. It's because the glue isn't tacky enough. So allow yourself that little extra few seconds. In the long run, it will save you time because you're not going to go back and forth and have to keep repositioning those flowers and the foliage and your accents when you add them in. So now I'm just going to come and I'm going to place that right over my mechanic, so it's just kind of hiding that. I'm just going to kind of look around and see where my biggest holes are. And there's just some natural spaces, negative spaces left by the way the ribbon loops fall. So that's where I'm going to place them. And then just making sure that I kind of have a balanced pattern. I'm going to put this one right up here. You can kind of see now, as you look around, it's harder to see that mechanic. And you can see how nicely those held right into place by me just putting them in there and giving them a quick little press. They held right in place where I wanted them. They didn't slip around, they didn't fall out. And now I'm able to go on with the next part of the corsage. The next thing we want to add in here really are our flowers. So I'm going to take my Gerber daisies, and actually I'm just going to use one. And yes, I am using permanent botanicals for my project. I'm doing that mainly just because it's easier for me where I'm located. I'm not in a flower shop. And I have a lot of beautiful permanent botanicals. But also for those of you who are watching, if you're doing your projects, if you're doing your practices, your practice pieces from these webinars in permanent botanicals, you have made all your samples that you can display in your prom display, your bling buffet, for your customers to see some of the samples that you're able to provide for them. So it really is a kind of a no-brainer when you're trying to get, during your busy season, trying to get a display in place. You can go ahead and do them in permanent, and then it's all done. And then you also can keep them from year to year and just update them with new accessories and new ribbons and stuff. So there really is some good sense in using permanent botanicals when you're practicing and doing these webinars. So this is, even though it is permanent botanical, really it's exactly like a fresh one would be. And it has the same type of back. So what I would do, if it were fresh, I would take my floral shears and I would start to cut away that back so that this little back piece here of the calyx is nice and flat. In this case, I have to use wire cutters because, it is permanent. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of chisel away at that stem because I want it to be nice and flat. And that's important. So if it were fresh, I would just come in here and go with my little floral shears like that, and it would clean up nicely. But let me get a couple little pieces where it's sticking up here that I don't like. Okay. Now that I have that nice and flat, I'm going to take my floral adhesive and I'm going to make sure I cover that cut. Again, if this were fresh, we want to use the floral adhesive to help the flowers actually last longer. Using that glue over the cut of the fresh flowers seals in the moisture and it doesn't let any bacteria into the flower through that cut. So it's actually aiding in the longevity, the life of your fresh cut flowers, which allows you to start your production for your prom a day or two earlier. So you don't have to worry about trying to do all of this on Friday and Saturday morning. You can actually start your production using the floral adhesive on Wednesday. That's a big help right in itself, especially for those of you who have those proms that fall on Mother's Day. Now you can see I've put quite a bit of glue, but again, it's not so much that it's starting to run down the sides, but I'm covering that back part of that Gerber daisy. If you have a Gerber daisy in your store, go ahead and turn it over when you're done with this, or if you have one in arm's reach, and you'll see it has that little flat spot where the stem connects before the little trumpet part starts to flare out. That's that flat spot. You want to make sure you have a nice coating that covers, so it's almost about a dime to a penny size in circumference. And again, there's just enough that it's solid. It covers everything, and it's not running down the side. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place that into my bow where I want it to go. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to make sure it has good contact, and I'm going to pull it out. And you can see what that's done. That's left a little glue residue in the place where I want it to sit. That's what we want. That creates that glue-to-glue contact. It's a lot cleaner than me trying to pour glue in and running the risk of one of those air bubbles coming out in that tube and then too much glue. So now I can place that back in, and I would gently but firmly press that down and hold it just for a few seconds, and then I can release it and it will stay. And honestly, I know this is a permanent botanical, but when you do it that way with your fresh Gerber daisy, you'll get exactly the same results. Make sure you have enough glue on that backside, put it into your bow, make sure you have some glue residue left, pull it out, put it back in. From the center of it, just firmly but gently, it is a fresh flower, you want to press down, hold it for a few seconds, release, and you're good to go. And you can continue on adding your accents without worrying about that flip-flopping or coming out of where you want it to be in your corsage. It's that simple. Now we can come in and add some of the accessories. And we have one of the stems of our flutters we're going to use, and we're going to add some accent sprays as well. You know, when we said we're going to do 3 projects, a lot of people say, well, you know, it's just hard getting our girls to, you know, buy into a lot of the additional accessories. They love them, they see them, but they're really concerned with cost. And if you do have one of those prom girls who really wants it, but maybe her budget doesn't allow for a pack of flutters in her corsage and another pack for her boutonniere and her third item, go ahead and just... Let's look at it this way. We have 3 stems, but each stem has multiple feathers on it. So we're just going to deconstruct this, and we're going to use 1 pack for all 3 items, spreading her budget out and giving her some of the fun, flirty accessories that she deserves to have in her corsage. So we're going to go ahead and just cut those right off. And with the Gerber daisy, depending on the variety, I love them because we can actually tuck some of the feathers in through the petals and all the way around. So again, I want to make sure we're with the front of the corsages, and that is where the ribbons are cascading down. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to add a few little feathers down in there. I'm going to make sure I have glue on both sides of the feather. It does get a little messy because, you know, feathers are how they are, but I'm going to just kind of separate my ribbon. I'm going to tuck that right in there. I'm going to take one of my little short ones, get some glue on that, and I'm going to tuck that here more on top. We're getting that layered look. We're bringing those accessories up through the entire corsage, not just keeping them flat and hidden underneath the ribbons and the flowers and the foliages. If you're going to sell those accessories, make sure you're positioning them in places where they're most impactful. Otherwise, they won't feel they got good value for spending that extra money. And the next time they come in, they're not going to be quite so willing and excited to order some of those fun accessories because you tucked them too far in underneath all the baby's breath and spray roses. Make sure the accessories that you're adding start to come up and build another layer into your corsage. I've got my windows open here in New Mexico next to me, and the breeze is blowing in, the spring breeze, and it's blowing my feathers around. I don't know if you can see that on screen or not, but it's very nice. I hope wherever you're located, you're starting to see the beautiful spring weather. Okay, I'm going to add one more. Right in here. Okay. You can see how that's kind of extended the size of the corsage, how they move when she walks and when she dances. That motion kind of is a fun way to help catch people's attention because you want them to see your corsage and you want your corsage to really stand out from all the others. And when you add things like the feathers, they show motion and they catch people's attention. So it's a fun accent to use. Now we're going to add in some of our accent sprays. And actually, don't forget these. Our flutters come with 3 rhinestones, and we're going to use those. We're not going to let them go to waste. I'm just going to set them aside here there for a second. And I always like to, when I get my rhinestone sprays out of the package, I like to kind of move them around and give them some life. I don't like them when they're just flat. So I kind of give them dimension. I twist them so that not all the gems are facing forward, because when I put it into the corsage, I want there to be something sparkly no matter what angle you're looking at that corsage. Another thing I want to do is I'm going to, the stem of this, I'm going to just twirl it around. I'm going to create like a little pigtail. It works great on a pen. That's a little too tight. Let's see if I can do it here. Yeah. A little pigtail. Creating a decorative end. It's, it's sparkly, it's shiny, it's reflective. So I don't always have to cut off the end of it, especially if it's finished, like the way our accent spray ends are. They're nice and finished. And it kind of looks like a braided wire, so you have some texture. So then I'm just going to bend that over. And then you'll see when I bent that over, it kind of created like this little pad here, this little loop. And I want that loop because when I add my glue, that's where I'm going to add my glue, right into that little loop. And you can see when I add the glue, it adds just enough that it's not just a little thin little piece on a tiny little stem. I've added enough glue onto that when I put that into my corsage, it's going to have the right amount of contact. It's going to actually stay put. If I were to use just this tiny skinny little end and try to put a dollop of glue on that wouldn't be enough glue to make sure that my spray is staying in that corsage when she dances the night away. So you can see it's kind of coming out to the side because I want it to be seen. I don't want it to be tucked in underneath the petals where it's not going to be noticed. Another one here. Do the same thing, just kind of manipulate it so that it's not so flat. Give it a little curlicue. Give it that little bend. So I create that little glue pad there. Tuck that in over here. Whoops. Tuck it in, pull it out, tuck it back in. I have one more to put in there. Same thing. Don't want it to be flat. Get my glue. And then put it into the corsage. And this one I'm going to kind of tuck up inside the petals of the Gerber daisy, depending on the variety. If it has that layer petal look, you're able to do that. But that, again, now I'm starting to bring, some of that sparkle that I have actually going around the outside bottom part. I'm bringing that up into the corsage. And then lastly, we have our 3 little rhinestones. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to clip those short. And this is a lot easier on a fresh Gerber daisy, actually, than it is the permanent botanicals. But I'm going to use these to create a little sparkle right in the center. And actually, I'm going to have to, once I've got it, for me, I'm going to actually flip it over because I can't actually poke into the center of the Gerber daisy. But when you're making it with the fresh Gerber daisy, just leave it's going to become like a little pin. And then you're just going to put a little dab on that, but make sure it's all the way around. you want to make sure you've got glue all the way around that little pin, and then you can poke that right into the center. And it's not going to work for me because, again, this is permanent, so it doesn't, but you can poke that right in the center and create a little pin. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and make just that little tiny glue pad like I did before. Get my glue on there and tuck that in the center. One more. There we go. Get the glue and tuck it in. And I've got a little bling in the center. I've got some bling around the petals and some bling circling around the outside of the Gerber daisies. I've got the feathers in there for motion. We've got the artificial corsage leaves to add another little texture and color to it. And we're all set and ready to go to prom. Does anybody have any questions on that? If not, we're going to move right on to a coordinating boutonniere. And today we're going to be using our easy pin to create our boutonniere. Now, the easy pin works great if you want to use the traditional methods of wire and taping. Really, you just consider this to be almost like one of your stems, and you would just construct, you would say you're using a rose, you'd go ahead and wire and tape your rose, your foliages, whatever you are going to be using, and then add this into the back and tape it right into your boutonniere. And the nice thing about the easy pin is that it has this backing, which when it's pulled off reveals the two, let's see, up here, it reveals the two pins on the back. So this is inserted through the lapel, and then you put the backing on that, and it helps that pin hold securely in place. It's not going to be one of those pin-on boutonnieres that starts to wobble and flip and spin when it's pinned on. It's going to be secure. It's easy to use. So if you're still selling a lot of those wired and taped boutonnieres, then certainly this is one of the products that Fitz offers that I would recommend you consider using, so that way it keeps right on, especially if they like the pin method. We also have quite a few magnets that you can add on to your pin wired and taped boutonnieres, but this is a fun one. And we're going to actually learn how to use this without having to wire and tape. So we're going to start off with actually a piece of ribbon. What we want to do is we're going to cover the base of our piece. So I want to take some glue. I'm going to go ahead and glue over the entire thing. Again, I've got enough on there that it's all covered, but it's not running off. I'm going to take my ribbon and I'm going to just lay it right over the top of that. And that covers my mechanics. So, now again, we don't like everything to be flat, so we're going to come in and we're going to add another layer of ribbon to this. That's what's going to fall over. So I'm going to cut another strip. I'm just going to give him a nice clean cut on the bottom. I'm going to determine where I want this to go, and I think I just kind of want it to end up kind of in the center. So then I'm going to add a little dab of glue where I want it to connect, where I want that to kind of be the binding point. I'm going to go ahead and place it on there. And then I'm going to come over with the second little loop. I'm going to put some glue. Now, because the fabric ribbon is very porous, you don't necessarily have to do that touch, pull back up, put it back down again, the glue will start to kind of, depending on the thickness of the ribbon, will start to seep through a little bit. So really it eliminates you having to do that extra little touch back and forth, which is kind of nice. But if you have a really, really thick ribbon, you might want to put a little dab of glue on both sides. So now I'm kind of have this for my base. I have this, the piece here that I put on first, and then I just created this little loop here. So this is actually where I'm going to start to add my focal point, my flowers and my accessories. And for this, I've got a beautiful little delphinium blossom that I'm going to pick. And I'm going to accent that with a little bit of freesia. Certainly you can do this with dendrobium orchids. You can do it with petals from the Gerber daisy. There's just a lot of, there's anything is possible with your creativity. So we've got our glue onto that back. Again, if these were fresh, I'd make sure wherever I cut that from the stem, I covered that with the glue. I'm going to put it right where I need it to go. I'm going to pick it up. And you see it leaves that little spot of glue there. Then I can put it back down, give it a nice little press, and it stays right in place. Now, some of you are saying, yeah, but Suzie, my guys don't like ribbon. But you know what? When you use it in a particular way where it's not doesn't look like a bow, and it's part of the coordinating, what coordinates it with the corsage, then it's okay to add it in. And you've got to convince them by showing them how nice it looks to have that coordinating ribbon in there. And it can be used in masculine ways. It doesn't have to be all loopy and hangy. It could just be tucked back in to add the color. I'm going to take some of the tiny blossoms from the freesia, and I'm going to tuck them inside that one up here inside that my little loop that I had created with the ribbon. And then I'm going to take another one, and I'm going to put it right down here on this side. So really, depending on what you're using, if you're using permanent botanicals or you're using fresh, you really should apply the same methods. That way, no matter what you're creating, you know your mechanics are always going to be proper and secure. So we just have a little bit of that lavender sticking out from the side. It's just kind of a hint of lavender in that. Have a little feather action going on here. So we're going to take our feathers. And again, this is pretty heavy to have just sticking out the top. So I kind of want to trim this back as well. Something else you can do, the boutonniere, some of the guys don't want to get too fluffy or frilly. So maybe it's just a couple little pieces of the feather, again, to make it coordinate. So I can actually take some of these extra pieces if I want and add them back into my corsage. Because that's, I'm still working on the same look, the same pieces that's going to be worn by the same couple. So you can spread that dollar out throughout the corsage, the boutonniere, and the third piece. You don't have to use it all in the same piece. Again, that helps spread your dollar, helps spread your budget, so that you're able to give them more accessories. And the more accessories that they select and you include, the more personalized that piece of floral jewelry becomes. Get them engaged in the whole selection process. Trust me, if you have all your items out on a bling buffet, if you have everything there for them to pick and choose from, they're going to start picking a lot of different things because they're going to love it. And once they have it in their hands and once they want it as part of their corsage or boutonniere, it's not going to matter how much it costs because they've already bought into it. They've already visioned it in their minds what that corsage and boutonniere is going to look like with everything they've picked out. So if you're keeping all your stuff behind the counter or in a shoebox and you bring one or two out to show everybody, consider putting it right out there for them to start picking what they want. And then they can bring all their selections to you in a little basket or a little bag, and then you can create something beautiful with what they picked out. So we have just 3 of the feathers from that spray. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to put some glue on these. And even though my corsage was pretty as it was, I have these 3 remaining. And I'm going to tuck those right into my corsage. So nothing goes to waste. You do not want to end up at the end of your prom with all these onesies, partially pieces, bits and pieces of things left over. Those of you who worked in shops that do a lot of permanent botanicals, it's the similar thing. You have that box where you have a whole bunch of foliage left. You have one rose, you have just one blossom from a stem, and you have all these onesies in this box that you never use. Instead, what you should be doing is making sure you use everything you have when you're creating those silk designs, when you're creating your corsages and boutonnieres, so you don't have all these onesie-twosies that you never use. And that's where you lose your money. That's where your profits go down the drain. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking those rhinestones from that flutter that I cut off, and I'm inserting them right into the center of my delphinium blossom to add a little sparkle down in. It's okay, guys can have a little tiny bit of sparkle if we wanted to. If he's one of these who just loves to have make a fashion statement and he likes that sparkle and shine just as much as you do, then we could go ahead and add in one of our accent sprays to that as well. But this guy's a little more conservative, so he just went with a little bit of the ribbon, some of the flowers, some of the feathers, and then we added a little bit of bling down inside that you really have to be up close to see it. So maybe it's more for his prom girl in here dancing, she can see that little sparkle in his boutonniere. So that's really how quick and easy that boutonniere went together. Just added the ribbon, glued right over the mechanics. You could also, I didn't do it here because I wanted you to be able to see that, but you could also take another little piece of ribbon if you wanted to, and go ahead and glue it to your back so that entire mechanic is concealed. But this is what it looks like as far as the construction. From the back, you have the clear stem, you have your pin, and you have your finished boutonniere. All right, then that leaves us really only with one more item, and that's the 3rd item. And if you're not already selling 3 items, the projects we're going to work on here are a good starting place for you. If you've ever look through one of our catalogs, you notice we have beautiful rhinestone headbands and necklaces and rings and a lot of different we have scepters, a lot of beautiful 3rd item options. But these 2 actually happen to be my favorite because for those of you, like I said, who haven't been doing this, this is the way you get your foot in the door. This is how you start to get your prom customers to embrace and understand that 3rd item isn't an option. It really is a necessity. It really is what the trend is. It's being totally accessorized from head to toe, and you're the one who's going to provide them with those accessories. And these 2 options, the comb and our personality clip, which just has this tiny little clip here on the back, which makes this able to secure to just about anything. You can secure it to a hemline of a dress, to a waistline, to the back of the dress so that she has a little floral accent that is seen when she's walking away from you. It could be attached to a belt, to a necklace, to a headband, to a shoe, to a purse. Really, wherever anything can be clipped, this can be worn. We even have girls who have a little bit thicker hair who are able to use this clip and just clip that into her hair. So really, it's very versatile and where you wear it. But getting to know your prom customer and getting to know what their dress looks like. I know Dan probably mentioned to you having that prom catalog or that prom magazine there so that she can show you her dress. When you see her dress and you see how it's constructed and what the hemline looks like and what the neckline looks like, you're going to be able to say, oh, you know what? You've got a lot going on. We need to put some flowers in your hair. Or, you know what? You have that beautiful slit up the side of your dress that's going to reveal your ankle and your shoes. We want to put something on your shoe. So take your cues from that dress, and that will help you determine where you want that third item to go. So I'm going to go ahead and just work right here on the personality clip. And again, I'm going to unravel that little rosette. Make sure that my mechanic is secured to that platform. I want to make sure everything stays together. Just give it a little extra tug. It really has quite a few knots in it, but you know me, I just got to give it at least one little knot to make sure. Better safe than sorry. Okay, now that I've got that, I can go ahead and cut these right off. If I'm not going to add a ribbon, I can just cut those right off. But in this case, I want to add a little ribbon to this. I want to add a little bow, a little of the same two colors that I had in the boutonniere and in the corsage. So I'm going to take my ribbon. I'm going to leave those on there just for now. I'm just going to make a little tiny ribbon here. I'm just going to take some of the streamers from this. Just a couple of them. I'm going to tie it off. I'll tie it off with this. You know, actually, I just changed my mind, and it's one of those things during the process. Actually, I'm going to make this so it's going to be worn on the back of her dress. You know, we're designers. We're allowed to change our mind in the middle of things. I want to make sure. Don't necessarily want it to be a bow. I just want the ribbon there for color and texture. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to cut those loops. So now it's going to be more like a starburst than it is going to be a bow. Let's see here. Okay, my chubby little fingers don't want to get out of the way of the scissors. That's not good. There we go. All right, I think that's all of them. So now I have this little, just kind of a, there we go. Okay. I don't like the way that's not finished. Finish them all off. You want to have nice clean edges. If you're not giving your ribbon consistent edging, and if you're going to do this little fishtail cut or dovetail, whatever you call it, or if you do just a diagonal cut, you can roll, especially if you have the wired, you can roll the ends of the ribbon. Just make sure you're consistent in how you finish off your ribbon streamers. It's really important. When you're making your corsages, you do it with your wedding work. Don't stop at your corsages. Don't stop short. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just put that on, tie that right on to my personality clip, just like I did with the corsage. And please, if you have any questions on this, don't hesitate to let us know. We want to make sure that you're understanding all our steps and why we're doing it. If you forget something, you can always revisit our webinars later on YouTube, or you can even email us or call the office with any of your questions. We want to make sure that we follow through with you. It's not just enough that we're all here today, but we want to continue that learning process and being available there for you. So make sure if you do have questions, and I know Dan always says share your success. So we want to hear how you're doing. If you've never sold 3 items before and you're going to start trying it this year, let us know how successful you were with that. So we have our little base here now. I'm going to go back again, just like I did the corsage. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue all over that disc. Enough to cover it, but not enough that it's running and dripping off the sides. I can go ahead and just push my bow back down, get it all nice positioned how I want it to be. Now, I said I kind of changed my mind how I wanted to do this, and I didn't add streamers into that, but I want streamers to hang off her back. So I'm going to come in with just a couple pieces of ribbon, and I'm going to cut them on a diagonal. And make sure I know where the top, and it is worn a certain way. So if I were going to put this on her back, I would want to make sure that it opened up so that it could just slip down over the back of her dress. So this is my bottom. I'm going to just take that end that was cut on an angle, add a little glue to it. Even though the glue that I have on here is probably more than enough, I'm just going to come up in here and I'm going to tuck those ribbons right up in there and actually press them down onto that glue that I have on the design disc. Again, glue to glue contact, which will really make sure everything is nice and secure. Get it up in there, tuck it in, just press it down. A couple little more ribbons. Cutting it on a diagonal makes sure I can get it up in there tight. Get it up in there, tuck it in there, make sure it makes contact with that disc. All right, one more little piece here on this side. Again, make sure it's making contact with that disc. Now I have some ribbon streamers that will cascade down her back when she clips this to the back of her dress. I'm going to come in with just a couple of those corsage leaves that I had. Again, I don't need the stems on them. And actually, in this case, these are like layered, so I don't need the whole stiff back of it. I want it to be as light as possible, so I'm going to remove them off that backing and just use the glitter side of it. Get my glue on those, just like I did for the corsage. I'm going to come back in and I'm going to place one to one direction, the opposite over here, and then I'm going to have one coming down into those ribbon streamers. I'm going to make sure I press it down so that it holds. Actually, there we go. And hold it in place. I need to push that in and press it down. There we go. And that's our base for our personality clip. And I can come back in with some coordinating flowers. I'm going to do the same delphinium that I have. Just a couple blossoms of that. And then I'm going to take a couple blossoms of the freesia that I had. Go ahead and make sure you know how the delphinium has that almost like that little tail that comes up? Sometimes that is okay. If it's too big and in your way, just go ahead and clip it off if you're going to use fresh delphinium in your corsages and boutonnieres. And yes, you can use fresh delphinium in your corsages and boutonnieres. Again, remember what I said earlier, as long as you're preparing your flowers and you've got beautiful, nice quality flowers and they're processed properly, you can use some of these more delicate blossoms, especially when you're using the glue technique. So don't be afraid to offer those items. Kind of break the mold and get away from using the sweetheart roses and the traditional filler flowers like wax flower and baby's breath or whatever it is you're using. Go ahead and offer some fun things. Just make sure you're charging for everything. Make sure when you're costing out your corsages this year that you've accounted for everything you're going to put in there, including the glue. Make sure you're measuring out that ribbon so that you just aren't going with whatever bow looks prettiest. It's really, really important that you know your cost. That's the only way you're going to be profitable in your corsage and boutonnieres. Add another little piece of purple in here. Tuck that right down in the center. It's okay when you start to get that little collection of glue there at the end of your tip. Go ahead and use that. It's still very good. It just kind of gets in the way. I don't like wasting anything, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now we have a little accent, but we still have some feathers and some rhinestones to put in there because we want her to be beautiful coming and going. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the feathers for the other two pieces. I'm going to deconstruct this and use them throughout the entire piece. I'll also use the rhinestones. Get my glue, front and back. Use that tip as your tool to help you manipulate where you need that glue to go. Just start tucking those in. They kind of curl upwards. If your feathers aren't really going in the direction you want them to go, excuse me, you can use your fingernail, you can use the back of your knife, not the sharp end, but the back, and kind of just run along that spine and get them to curl how you want them to go. It helps create that visual path that your eye follows when the feathers kind of curl back in. Helps draw your eye back into the corsage or any design really that you're creating. Tuck those in. This one I actually am going to glue the bottom, tuck it in where I want it to go. I'm going to come back and I'm going to put a little glue, and it gets a little tricky, but if you hold it right and you use that tip, put a little glue on that tip. Well, that feather, I know it's kind of hard to see. There we go. Put it up against my black shirt. You can see it. I've added a little bit of glue. So now I'm going to just kind of bend that, curve it, tuck that into my corsage. And now you can see what I did with that, how I curved it around the top. So now I have feathers coming out that are to the sides that are actually curling back in, and then I have the one that's arched over the top of the piece. Got to make sure I use these rhinestones here from that flutters. Don't want to waste anything. You've paid for it. You've charged for it. So we want to make sure we're using it. I'm just going to come back with these. I'm going to tuck them into the florets, so they all have these little sparkly centers to them. Again, if you're using them with fresh, you can leave the little end like a pin, and then you can insert that right down into the center of your flower, and it will kind of help hold that in. We'll just tuck these in the center. There we go. You don't want to push them too far in because you want them to be seen. What's the point of going on through all that work and effort to get them glued and to cut them and put them in, and then you tuck them so far in that no one can see them? That seems kind of silly to me. We want to make sure that they're at a level that they're actually being noticed. Add a few of these. And this time I'm going to go ahead and remove the stem because I don't need it to be too much since she's wearing it on the back of her dress. So I cut off the stem, and then I'm just going to kind of curl it up because I still want that gluing platform. So I'm just going to kind of bend it up several times so that it's just not that straight, thin little stem. I've kind of see what I've done there. I've just kind of curled it up. So now that's what I'm going to add the glue to. Top and bottom, make sure there's glue all the way around that. Give my gems a little twist so they're not flat, so they have some dimension to it. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to stick those in where I want them to go, pull it out, stick it back in. You can see how they sit out above the flower petals so that they're actually being seen. Go ahead and cut them 2 at a time. Try to work efficiently because I know you've got lots and lots of orders, so you can't be wasting your time. Working efficiently is so important when you're doing this production work, especially for those of you who are lucky enough to have your prom on Mother's Day. All right, work them around. Tuck it in, pull it out, tuck it back in. I've got one more here. Oh, actually, I can do it with my finger. I didn't think I could, but I can. There we go. Got that little platform, my glue, and we're almost done. Bring that back in up here, tuck. Pull it out, put it back in. And now we've created a beautiful little personality clip that she can wear on the back of her dress that will accompany her corsage, the boutonniere. We've given her the 3 items, and we've made her the princess of the prom. So does anybody have any questions before we sign out here this afternoon? I guess not. Well, thank you again for joining us, and especially for those of you who joined us on Tuesday and then had to come back here today on Thursday. We really appreciate your patience and your flexibility, and we really are glad that you're joining us here at Fitz Design for our Team Training Tuesday webinars. We have a great one in store for next week as well, actually 2, but the sympathy one I think is really going to be an exciting one because it really gets to showcase some of our wonderful and beautiful sympathy products. So I hope if you're not registered for that you'll go ahead and go into our website and register for that one next Tuesday. Anything else? Is there anybody out there, Jamie, who has any questions or any comments that they want to do before we give our final goodbyes?
I don't see anything here.
Oh, that's
great presentation. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you again. And we appreciate you coming here and joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again on another Team Training Thursday/Tuesday webinar. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.